I remember when the Trinidad and Tobago government proposed a sex offenders registry, the kind of discussions that surrounding it. Well, this morning we're going to be talking about that, not only in a TNT context, but in a global context, especially the Caribbean, what it would mean to have that sexual offenders registry. So we're inviting and welcoming to the program Jonathan Bagon, chairman of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes. Good morning to you, Mr. Bagon.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. Let's just start talking about being the chairman of the Caribbean Committee Against the Sex Crimes and where this committee where it came out of.
So a young woman named Camille St. Omer, she started an NGO in North Carolina called Zandali, USA. And in 2015, we had an online meeting with over 35 organizations across the Caribbean, different NGOs. We had Jamaica, St. Lucia, Grenada, most of the states represented. And we formed a joint agreement to push for a regional sex offenders registry. And well, Camille was the first person that I ever met who realized that there's something called the U.S. International Megan's Law to End Child Sex Trafficking, and it allows for sex offender registry information to be shared across borders between countries.
Yeah.
So while most people, they watch television, they watch Law and Order, and they think they know what a sex offender registry is, they're still looking at law and policy and technology from 20 years ago. What we're pushing is the latest policy and the latest technology.
All right, so let's talk about that. What do you think the latest technology and policy would mean for the Caribbean? And what do we actually have in place now so that we could get this sexual offenders registry going? So
regionally, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Belize have some form of sex offender registry law. But what we're trying to do is I signed a memorandum of agreement with OffenderWatch, that's a US-based software company, and they want to directly interconnect our databases with a database in the US called the Angel Watch Center system. And rather at the basic level, it will allow police to track sex offenders when they cross borders. We know Nicki Minaj's husband, it was a high-profile case of a registered sex offender who came into Trinidad, had an altercation with one of our soca artists during Carnival, and then we realized that, wait, now this man is a criminal. Why wasn't immigration informed?
Right.
So we are here to fix those gaps between information. And even beyond all that, the latest technology is that we can, using OffenderWatch software called the Safe Virtual Neighborhood, we can intercept whenever a registered sex offender tries to message a child on social media or on the internet.
And that would be excellent. So if we have this Caribbean sex offenders registry, what are the kinds of information that would be on it and who would be able to access it?
Well, there will be different levels. The Trinidadian law only allows high-profile sex offenders that the judges decide are enough of a risk to go on a public website for the public to access. There's that level, and there's the police level. So in the research by, there's a paper by Prescott and Rockoff published in 2011 that the police level register is very effective. And I did a seminar where basically they were teaching different police officers in the US, like the software, it gives you a map like Google Maps, and you can see all the sex offenders within a certain radius. And so if there's a crime, you can look at the nearest sex offender and link them to the crime. And it helps investigation. And as we develop a technology and say we're tracking these people by the IP address and the email address online, we may be able to crack down on human trafficking networks internationally.
Right, but for the average man, would I be able to access that sex offenders registry to see who is on it, what their crimes are?
So only Trinidad has that, and it is still dependent on the judges to decide which offender is risky enough to put him on the website. Because remember, in a small society like in the Caribbean, that's if a sex offender is living in a household with other family members, them being on a website is going to affect the lives of everybody else in the family. So we had to be sensitive to the government, and the NGOs, when they drafted the bill, was sensitive to that reality and made a provision to protect innocents who may be connected.
So then how does this really help us though? It might help the police. But for me, I have a young daughter. She's 15 years old. And I want to know what kind of activities are going on online or who she's communicating with. If I see her communicating with somebody, profile may be fake, it may say this person is 15 as well, not recognizing that it's a big person. I can't check to see the information on the sex offenders registry. How much is it really serving us?
Well, so for what we're trying to do, we're calling it the Operation Global Sex Offenders Registry. I sent a proposal to the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago in September to amend the law to allow the latest software from OffenderWatch to be implemented. So if it is implemented, you'll get an app to put on your child's phone, and every time a registered sex offender calls your child, contacts the child on social media, and it also allows for like GPS tracking. So if your child's phone goes near to a registered offender's place of abode, you will be informed instantly.
So it's that even though you're talking about a regional sex offenders registry, is that it will be depending on each country's legislation to determine who can see what? Yes,
and I did tutor human rights law in the University of the West Indies for a semester, and I can tell you the human rights law in the Caribbean is very different to the US. In the US, once you're in the interest of national security, they will do whatever it takes to protect their citizens and their borders. We know that. In the Caribbean, we tend to lean more on in the area of the Trinidad and Tobago Constitution. It says that any derogations from human rights must be reasonably justifiable in the interests of the democratic society. So, and the governments don't want to pass legislation and then have to face a lawsuit when a sex offender sues them. And, you get the idea. To prevent it from being messy, we're still dependent on the legislation due to how our constitutions are drafted. It's just the reality. But I am working to change that. I have connected with CARICOM. CARICOM Impacts, they're aware of the work that's going on, and different stakeholders in the region. So we're hopefully in a couple of years, the legislation will be in place to protect the children.
So what legislation are you going after? Are you trying to go after legislation that would see all the Caribbean islands who signed on to the sex offenders registry being able to share information across borders, and will the average man be able to access that information as well?
Well, we keep in mind how difficult it is to get any government in the world to do, to adopt certain policies. So we are trying. And I know for sure that within a couple of years, we'll get all of the region onto some form of sex offenders registry. Whether the average citizen gets access to that will be dependent on each individual government. But I can tell you that keep in mind, the data does show that just the implementation, once somebody who's contemplating a new crime realizes that there's that risk of being registered, and when they're registered under our proposed system, that data is going to be shared with the US, with every partner country. So that data is going to follow them for a long time, for years to come. They cannot go any country in the world without being stopped by immigration and being questioned as to why you in this country and what you're here to do.
And what makes you so sure you'll be able to achieve this, especially when you talk about how human rights laws are drafted in the Caribbean? What makes you so sure this sex offender would register with the system to say, okay, I'm going on this list?
Well, I am sure that so I'm walking by faith and not by sight, one. And two, there is incredible support for what we're doing from basically every quarter. I have everybody, every criminologist, every politician who has spoken to me thus far does support it in principle. The technicalities of implementing it, which as we all know with government, the implementation of anything is where it gets hard. But we'll be working on it over the next few years to implement
it. And how far along are you in this this work that you're trying to do to get this regional sex offenders registry going?
Well, it depends when you measure the starting point. If you measure it from 2015, when the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes was formed, then I was appointed chairman in 2016. We did succeed in bringing Trinidad and Tobago well, we advocated, and Trinidad and Tobago did implement the registry in 2019. We're still pushing for that one. It's just like 2 paragraphs to allow the data to be shared internationally and implement the software. There's a very small amendment. So, and the new partnership with OffenderWatch, we only announced that in September of 2020. So we're only basically a month into our latest work, but we have good feedback from CARICOM did call me on my cell phone, and we had a conversation, which, I mean, if you talk to my friends in the diplomatic service, they say it's very rare for CARICOM to call anybody. So I would say they're interested, they're on board, and they are trying their best to fight crime in the region.
Right, but when you talk about JATT and Belize are just the 3 countries so far that have some form of sexual offenders registry, and you're talking about CARICOM, which is at least 14 member states is strong. It's a lot of work left to do.
I have faith that we will get it done. I'm only 31, so if it takes 10 years, I'll get it done. Still have time.
Okay. All right. I think it's admirable what you're trying to do, and I'm really hoping it comes on stream, but I'm also hoping that in your push, that push will mean that the average person can have access to that information. I remember even in Trinidad and Tobago, when that piece of legislation was before the parliament, how the people reacted to it, because at the end of the day, if there's a sexual offenders registry and I can't access that, how do I protect those who I love?
Well, looking forward, because if you're following the latest developments in artificial intelligence and software, I believe that the whole issue, all right, so when the first public register came out on the internet in the United States, that is the early days of the internet. And back then, having a website was a big deal. That was in the 90s to early 2000s. If we're implementing the latest technology, so if we had an app that told you if a sex offender was in the immediate vicinity or told you the relevant information, one, we may be able to bypass the whole fear of vigilante justice, because the software will tell you what you need to know. So and it'll actually be more efficient than relying on your own individual time and attention to scan a register in your spare time. And there's still room for human error if you're using a public register. But if we have an app on your phone that tells you if you're getting too close to somebody's house who's dangerous, that's a bit more advanced. And that's where I hope to bring the Caribbean. And OffenderWatch is offering that software to the rest of the world as well. It's just they decided to start in the Caribbean and in Trinidad because, interesting fact, Trinidad and Tobago appears to be the smallest country in the world with a public sex offender registry law. So they were very interested when they saw that, and they decided this is the ideal country to have their pilot project.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bagan, for sharing with us this morning. I think it's quite noble, the undertaking, but I hope that it's a success.
Thank you for your time. Have a great day.
You're most welcome, Jonathan Bagan there, who is the chairman of the Caribbean Committee Against Sex Crimes, and they're proposing to have a Caribbean sex offenders registry, but also this app, the software OffenderWatch, that can tell you when a sex offender is close by so you can beware. We take a break and we'll be back with you.